Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive with us. Today we are taking a look at Garry Kasparov.
Now, before you skip ahead thinking this is just another chess episode, let me stop you right there.
Yeah, this is going to be anything but a boring game
It
analysis.
really is. This is about a guy who went from, well, we'll get to it, but prodigy status to, going toe-to-toe with Putin himself.
And even at one point was a presidential candidate.
You can't make this stuff up.
Seriously. We're drawing mostly from his Wikipedia page, which is just like a goldmine of fascinating information.
What's amazing to me is how much his story resonates even today, you know?
Oh, totally.
I mean, think about it. Strategic thinking, political defiance, going up against AI. Talk about a life ripped from the headlines, right?
For real. Okay, so we got to start with the chess stuff. I mean, the guy's a legend.
Right, let's set the stage.
Picture this. You're 14 years old.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you thinking about, what concert you're going to?
Driver's license?
Exactly. But at 14, Kasparov is playing in the Sokolsky Memorial.
Which, for those who don't know, is not some casual chess club meetup. We're talking serious tournament in Minsk.
Huge deal. And get this. He wasn't even supposed to win. It was like, we're humoring the young kid kind of invite. But guess what?
He cleaned up.
It's like showing up to your local park's basketball court and, schooling the regulars.
And here's the thing. That wasn't a fluke. That win solidified something for him. This is the moment, at 14, where Kasparov decides, chess is my life.
Talk about laser focus, right?
No kidding. But hold on, because it gets even wilder. 1 year later, he's 15 years old, and he becomes the youngest player ever to win the USSR Chess Championship.
Okay, imagine the pressure cooker of that tournament.
Yeah.
You've got seasoned veterans who've been playing for years.
Decades, some of them, and this kid comes out on top.
That's not just talent at that point. That's a whole other level of mental toughness.
It's even more impressive when you think about the backdrop of all this. I mean, this isn't just any championship. This is the Soviet Union in the 1980s. You've got major political and social tension. Winning wasn't just personal. It carried the weight of, well, everything.
The Cold War. The whole 9 yards.
Exactly.
So, speaking of pressure, enter Anatoly Karpov, the reigning world champion at the time.
Okay, now things are getting interesting.
This rivalry, it was epic. 5 matches over 6 years, and you ready for this? 144 games.
It became symbolic of, well, a clash of styles, a clash of eras even.
Right. You had Karpov, this establishment figure, versus Kasparov, this young upstart, and he was there to shake things up.
And their playing styles, night and day. Karpov, slow, positional, he'd grind you down. Kasparov, he brought the aggression, the dynamism. You never knew what he'd do next.
Their games weren't just matches, they were like intellectual wars. Every move was a statement.
And don't even get me started on their first world championship match in 1984.
Oh, man, legendary. Not just for the chess, but the intensity, the politics swirling around it.
It ended up being stopped, can you believe it? After 48 games, a record at the time.
The president of FID, the International Chess Federation, had to step in. People were going crazy. Karpov was slightly ahead, but a lot of people felt like Kasparov was gaining ground,
Talk about controversial. It only played into this whole image of Kasparov as the rebel, the guy here to disrupt everything. I'm not sure he even saw himself that way, but...
But challenging the status quo, that was becoming his thing, both on and off the chessboard.
Absolutely. And when there's a rematch that big on the horizon...
Everyone wins. And Kasparov delivered. 1985, he faces Karpov again and wins decisively. Youngest ever undisputed world chess champion.
A title he held for 15 years.
Think about that for a second. 15 years at the very top, constantly innovating, constantly facing new challengers. That's incredible.
It's a level of mental resilience, strategic depth that most people can't even fathom.
Seriously.
Yes.
CEOs, world leaders would kill for that kind of edge.
Yeah.
And the really wild part, his journey takes some pretty crazy turns from here. Yeah. We're talking about a guy who took on a supercomputer at the peak of his powers.
The Deep Blue match is a whole other story, for sure. But before we jump into Kasparov's world of artificial intelligence, we've got to talk about how he goes from chess champ to, wait for it, political activist.
Yeah, kind of like, wait, what? Going from, chess champion to, full-on political activist.
It does feel like a bit of a leap, right?
You'd think, stick to the chessboard, man. But here's the thing. This wasn't just some PR stunt for Kasparov.
No, not at all. This was about taking those skills, that strategic brilliance, and applying it to, well, the real world, the political chessboard of Russia in the early 2000s.
And you got to remember, this wasn't just some, like, armchair analyst.
Oh, no, this is Kasparov we're talking about.
This is a guy who knows a thing or two about pressure, about high-stakes decisions.
He had stared down world champion, outsmarted grandmasters.
And now, he's setting his sights on something even bigger.
Taking on an increasingly authoritarian regime.
And let me tell you, he didn't mince words. He became this, like, very vocal critic of Vladimir Putin.
He called it like he saw it.
Speaking out against corruption, human rights abuses.
The erosion of democratic values in Russia. And think about that for a second. The sheer guts it took to do that.
Knowing the potential consequences, I mean, that's...
Well, remarkable to stand up and say, this isn't right.
when you know it could cost you everything.
Exactly. And unfortunately, that courage came at a price. Kasparov faced threats, harassment. He was even arrested. In 2007, he was detained just for participating in a peaceful protest in Moscow. I mean...
That just shows you, speaking truth to power, it's not easy. Especially when you're dealing with someone like Putin.
Not at all. It's dangerous. And eventually, it just became too much.
And in 2013, Kasparov made the incredibly difficult decision to leave Russia.
Think about that, leaving his homeland, his family, everything he knew.
Because the alternative was basically, what, stay silent? Or...
Or face even harsher consequences. It's an impossible choice to make, to leave everything behind for your principles.
It really shows you the strength of his convictions, you know? He could have stayed quiet, lived a comfortable life.
But that's not Kasparov. And even in exile, he never stopped fighting for what he believed in.
No way. He became this, like, leading voice for democracy and human rights on the world stage.
It's almost like his exile amplified his message.
Totally. And remember how we talked about him taking on that supercomputer?
Oh, yeah. Deep Blue.
His interest in technology goes way back, especially artificial intelligence.
He was an early adopter of computer chess, even used it to analyze his own games.
Imagine that, using this cutting-edge tech to push his own understanding of the game even further.
It's actually a really interesting parallel to his political activism.
How so?
In both cases, Kasparov's not afraid to confront these seemingly insurmountable challenges.
Right. Whether it's this supercomputer that can calculate, what, millions of moves per second?
Or a powerful authoritarian regime.
So tell me about this Deep Blue thing. This is the supercomputer, right?
Yeah. Back in '96, Kasparov faced off against Deep Blue, which was IBM's chess-playing machine. Big publicity thing, huge crowds.
Yeah.
Kasparov won that first match, but then there was the rematch in '97.
The one everyone remembers.
Exactly. It was a watershed moment, not just for chess, but for how we understood AI.
Your trust.
Because Deep Blue won the rematch. It defeated Garry Kasparov, the reigning world chess champion.
Which was a huge deal. I mean, people were talking about it everywhere.
It was like AI went from science fiction to, well, reality.
And what does Kasparov do? He takes this loss and turns it into this opportunity for reflection.
Classic Kasparov. He argued that instead of fearing AI, we should be thinking about how to use it, how to work with it.
We even wrote a book about it.
Deep thinking, where artificial intelligence ends and human creativity begins.
I mean, talk about turning a loss into a learning experience.
Yeah.
But it goes even deeper than that. Kasparov didn't just write about chess.
Oh, absolutely not. This is a man who loves to explore complex ideas. And he does it brilliantly in his books. You know, you said earlier that his story is really relevant today. And I think his writing is a huge part of that.
Because he's not just talking about pawns and rooks anymore, right?
No, he's grappling with technology, the future of democracy, big, challenging ideas. And he makes them accessible, understandable.
Totally. And, you know, it's funny you should say that, because I think that's the common thread through all this. This unwavering belief in the power of strategic thinking.
So it's not just about, like, raw intelligence. It's more about how he approaches stuff, right?
Exactly. Kasparov, he's always looking 10 steps ahead, always trying to anticipate, thinking about the bigger picture, no matter what he's doing.
It's like he's playing chess with, well, everything.
And that ability to think strategically, to adapt, that's not just some chess thing, you know?
Oh, for sure.
It's relevant to, well, life, career decisions, relationships, even just figuring out your day, having that strategic mindset. Huge. It's like he's saying, hey, life's a game of chess, people. But there's something else about Kasparov. You know, this guy's not afraid of controversy at all. Like, he'll challenge anything.
You're thinking about his views on history, right?
Yeah. The new chronology thing, I mean, we don't have time to get into all that, but just the fact that he's out there, a chess grandmaster, supporting this super controversial theory.
It says a lot about him, that's for sure.
That's Kasparov for you. always pushing boundaries, always asking questions.
He wants to understand the why, not just the what.
But you know what I find really inspiring about him? It's his belief in human potential. Like, even after going up against a supercomputer, even after exile, he never loses sight of what humans are capable of.
Totally. He really believes that we can achieve incredible things if we just embrace our creativity, our resilience.
Our ability to, think strategically.
Exactly. So we've talked about a lot here. Chess, politics, AI, even a little bit of controversial history.
Ooh, what a ride.
What's the takeaway for our listeners? What can we learn from a guy like Garry Kasparov?
I think it's a reminder that strategic thinking, it's not some superpower you're born with. It's a skill.
It can be learned, practiced, honed.
And, maybe it's also a call to be a bit bolder in our own lives, yeah.
Take some risks, challenge assumptions, never stop learning.
Because at the end of the day, like Kasparov shows us, the human mind, it's capable of amazing things if we just push ourselves a little.
Well, that was quite a deep dive, wasn't it? Garry Kasparov, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this wild ride. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep on diving deep.